Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Obviously, journalism is in a state of complete panic and chaos, but that doesn't excuse this. If you are one of the leading voices for liberal values and for social justice in America, which the New York Times likes to think of itself as being, you ought to practice that. And the way to stop discrimination is to stop discriminating. If you're sitting there with the records of what you're paying people and you see that the number one woman is paid less than the number two man, I'm sorry, Arthur Sulzberg Jr., fix it.
All right, folks, the left is up in arms, and they're eating one of their own, and not just one of their own, maybe the one of their own. We're talking about the firing of executive editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, and rumor has it that she wasn't making as much as her predecessor and wasn't even making as much as the guy under her. Joining us now to talk about that and much more is our friend Tim Graham, Director of Media Analysis for the Media Research Center. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
I got to tell you, I'm sitting back and taking it all in and loving it, and I'm finding myself that if I'm forced to give an opinion here, I mean, I'm actually defending the owner of the New York Times, which I can't believe, because this equal pay for equal jobs, you know, we've established there are other factors that go into it, and now they're getting a taste of their own liberal medicine.
Not only that, but liberals are very big about transparency about pay. They want to make sure that everyone knows how much everybody else in your office makes. Clearly, that wasn't the way they wanted it at the New York Times. We just enjoyed this clip from Leslie Bennett's because she's saying what everybody understands, which is the New York Times understands itself as a transmission belt for liberal values. Therefore, whenever there's an accusation that they're failing liberal values, it really should make it more interesting. All three network morning shows actually touched on this today. So it has gone beyond one of those inside the news industry bubble stories.
Absolutely it has. And you know, none of this has been, as far as I know, confirmed about the pay. I mean, they've said some very horrific things about her personality, her style, you know, what she's done in her position. Those things have been talked about and have leaked out as well. So I'm not even sure how this pay thing fits in unless she actually did approach them and they said, well, that you can't approach us on that and we're going to fire you. But all the other points they're making about how poorly run the paper was, how it's fallen, and how her personality wasn't conducive to a working atmosphere or a productive working atmosphere would seem to have a lot of credence.
Well, I mean, look, from a conservative's perspective, this is still a hack partisan liberal newspaper. That's obviously, to some extent, how you measure success at the New York Times. How effectively have we promoted the Obama administration? How effectively have we promoted Hillary for president? And so on. I think that Jill Abramson's problem was, you know, you can't just simply say, you can't call me pushy because I'm a feminist. I mean, at some point, she simply did not get along with the owner. In any enterprise, if you can't get along with the guy that's signing your check, you're not going to last. And now that can be a serious public relations problem for the New York Times. But it's America. He has every right to do it. And maybe Arthur Sulzberger Jr., they just haven't paid enough attention to this man and whether he's a really serious man or he's a bit of a silly figure.
Yeah, you know, maybe they could consider taking the New York Times away from him somehow if he's paying him less.
A la Donald Sterling.
Yes.
Well, there's no league of newspapers.
Yes. And not only that, make sure no one in his family works there anymore either.
Oh, look, this is the hot thing in liberal circles, you know, because over the weekend when the Miami Dolphin, Don Jones, expressed horror at the Michael Sam gay kiss, there were people on Twitter suggesting he should be banned from football.
Yeah.
Like Sterling. So
Well, I got to their credit. I had Joe Conason sitting here. He agreed, with my point. I had Rick Unger sitting here. He agreed with my point, too, liberals. And both of them, when I said, about the kids, what if a father's watching with his 9 or 8-year-old kid and he wouldn't take him to a movie if he knew that two men were going to kiss? Shouldn't he have the right to know? And they both agreed. They said, good point. So I've heard from liberals that, ESPN should have taken that into consideration.
Well, the ludicrous thing there, Steve, was that the ESPN producers that were sent to San Diego for the express purpose of filming the reaction then tried to claim, well, we don't make social or political decisions.
Right.
Clearly, this whole visual was a social and political decision. They all decided, what other 7th-round pick got a camera crew from ESPN?
Yeah, well,
that's
absolutely.
Social and political decision. They ought to at least be honest and say, we're going to force those liberal values down the macho throats of the NFL crowd. That's their real mentality. ESPN is far more politically correct than the audience that they're trying to get to. And then there are a lot of Americans who are just like, I just want my sports. Do I have to have all of this liberal bias shoved down my throat along with my sports?
Right, and of course we could talk about the double standard, the way they treat Tim Tebow. Why does he wear it on his sleeve? Who cares? He should keep it to himself. It's nobody's business, and it's a complete hypocrisy compared to the way they're covering Sam, who, by the way, now has his own reality show, which is going to go over real well with his teammates when that camera crew starts following around a man who hasn't made the team yet. They're going to love that, believe me. All right, let's move on to a great piece that you and Brent Bozell co-authored, which I read at newsbusters.org, and it's taking Mike Rogers to task. I heard him interviewed, and he's leaving the Congress. He's going to become he's not specific. I guess he's a talk show host as opposed to a commentator, although I don't know if he's made that clear. And he's basically going around trashing talk radio.
It is never a smart idea if your idea is, I'm going to become a conservative radio host, so I'm going to start my publicity tour at the New York Times.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go on there, as the writer from the New York Times describes conservative radio as a set of, quote-unquote, delirium bins. I'm going to go along and suggest to the reporter that I am the canary in the coal mine, and hopefully I can withstand the fumes. This is not the way you say howdy do and welcome. Clearly you understand that if you're a member of Congress and you become a talk show host, that you could say, I'm qualified to discuss the issues of the day. I've been there. We have lawyers in talk radio like Mark Levin and Laura Ingraham. That is a plus when you have a resume where you've got some experience. But you don't come in and say, everybody else here is a moron. And by the way, if you listen to them, you're a moron.
Yeah,
that's to build an audience.
Again, it's almost a Michael Samish in his cockiness, and I got to tell you, I just don't see. I grew up listening to talk radio. I've worked in talk radio for 30 years. I just don't see a clamoring of people to want to hear what Mike Rogers has to say for 3 hours a day on a 5-day-a-week basis. I mean, I just don't get it. I see nothing dynamic about him, nothing insightful about him. Does he know his stuff in some regards? Yeah, but then he'd make a great guest. But I just don't see him being a host. But let's talk about someone who's been a host and is a host and is, fancies himself down the middle. I have no opinions, unless, of course, they're liberal opinions. Then they're okay, and there's still no opinions. Michael Smerconish, you talk about trashing talk radio. Watch this. Okay, 7, please. Okay. All right, folks. Well, you're aware of what he said, Tim. He said, all kinds of things about talk radio that basically Hannity and Limbaugh and all of them, they don't believe what they say. They do it for money. They do it for showbiz. It's phony. I have to reveal this now. I feel it's incumbent upon me because I am the great Michael Smerconish and I am down the middle. And that's why I'm telling the truth about the talk radio business. He is full of crap.
I think that, again, you don't become a success in talk by trashing everybody who is who has succeeded in it. And who has succeeded more in talk than someone like Rush Limbaugh? Obviously, he's a very wealthy man, in part because he's such a success. He has built an audience and kept an audience that Michael Smerconish is never going to acquire. And this all reminds me of other politicians. We're talking about Mike Rogers. Fred Thompson tried talk radio. That didn't work. But Smerconish is more like the Joe Scarborough radio show, where he brought Mika along for the ride, and they thought somehow they could take the Morning Joe formula into radio, and it flopped. Yeah. So this is what's going to happen, I think, is if you come in and basically say, I'm the sensible person, how is that any less arrogant? You know, my wife doesn't like the talent on loan from God business. Let's show business. You know, we understand that. Right. I don't think with Smerconish, he's trying to be utterly sincere.
Absolutely. That is a big deal. You're right. A talent on loan from God, everybody knows his shtick, tongue-in-cheek, bravado. Smerconish wants to be taken seriously with all this garbage. And believe me, I know Limbaugh, I know Levin, I know them all. They believe what they say. Hey, Tim Graham, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Give Me 5 is next, folks. Don't go away.